outset, I must explain why I'm here. I'm here for two reasons. One is my huge and phenomenal respect for BCAS, which is completing its 75 years now, and I compliment BCAS. And the second, of course, BCS is much older than I am, not much older, somewhat older than I am. So you can imagine I too am an old man speaking to you all. The second reason is this very topic, and the theme of this whole event is Reimagine, Technology Revolution, Existential Threat or a Game-Changing Opportunity for the Audit Profession. I have always passionately believed that we must look ahead. You don't drive a car by looking in the rear view mirror. You always drive looking ahead. And that's what, as a profession, we need to continuously do. And I did notice that quite some people left the hall, maybe because they believe that the future will be the same as the present, or that the profession has no future, and they don't want to hear that bad news. But that is why I think this session is very aptly titled. We've got three very eminent panelists from different backgrounds, and I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, this will be a very, very fruitful discussion between the panelists. But let me give my opening remarks, and each one of them will do so. And as I said, to ensure that I don't forget anything, I have written down some things, and therefore pardon me if I, unlike my usual self, read out also. Let me begin by saying that in the annals of human history, there are moments that stand out, which have been the turning points. And the fate of humanity always hangs in balance at such moments. And we are in one such moment. For instance, the discovery of fire, or the invention of the wheel, the harnessing of electricity, the printing press. All of these were moments that transformed human civilization and altered the course of history. And each of these began with something very innocuous. And that is why my caution to you, ladies and gentlemen, is not to ignore those signals. A fire was perhaps discovered or invented to cook food, and thereafter it's gone into even rockets in the way it is. The wheel, what was intended maybe for a potter to make pots, whoever imagined that it will transform the transportation sector? Today you move from place to place, even fly from place to place because of the wheel, whether the wheel which is turning in a fan in a propeller of a plane, or the wheel of a car, or whatever it may be. Printing press was invented to print more copies of the Bible. And look at how printing press transformed our lives. Similarly, what we are seeing today, technology is going to transform our lives. Coming back to this world of the accounting and auditing profession, it's so different from the time it evolved. The age-old system of bookkeeping, as you know, has been replaced by technology-enabled record keeping. Additionally, today we are talking of a new term. When I say new, it's relatively old already, is the term the cloud, which requires access using digital technology, and traditional audit methodologies and tools are therefore becoming, or have become, ineffective. We now stand at a moment where we see a rising or a coming wave of technology that includes both artificial intelligence and biotechnology. Never before have we witnessed technologies with such transformative potential, promising to reshape our world in ways that are awe-inspiring and daunting. There have been significant advances in 5 fronts which are transforming the audit profession. Let's not ignore these 5. These are simple words: looking, listening, reading, writing, and integrating knowledge. All of these have changed significantly. When you're looking at, when you're seeing things differently through different devices today. Imaging, image sensors, listening, the way, I mean, it is, today systems can pick you out of a crowd, and that is seeing. Today, systems can read your lips at a distance, and by examining all the micro expressions and other biomarkers, tell us what you're actually feeling. That's where life has progressed. And has the audit profession caught up to this? These developments are no longer in labs, but they are in the real world. Further, we are moving from a world of nanoscopic to microscopic to the world of nanoscopic. Nanotechnology is at the outer edge of material science, the point where matter manipulation gets nano small. That's 1 million times smaller than an ant. What we are progressing is to 1 million times smaller than an ant, 8,000 times smaller than a red blood cell, and 2.5 times smaller than a strand of DNA. And if it's nano like this, we will have an auditing standard on physical verification of assets. What assets are we talking about? Where are they? Have we even thought of the world which is moving ahead and saying, where are we? What are we going to examine if we are moving from microscopic to nanoscopic? What does this mean for traditional auditing standards? I'm just setting a foundation, mind you. And the other day, or even as I walked into the hall, somebody said, don't scare me. Don't scare us. I'm not here to scare you. I am scared, definitely. And I did say that if you have to pass the CA exam, you should be scared, correct? At that time, you didn't complain. Now, why are we complaining? Then I had a colleague send me a text message, former colleague send me a text message in the morning. Sir, I hope you'll speak positively about the profession. Now, I didn't know what to answer, because what is positive or negative is one's individual perception. And a third person I talked to, he called me incidentally. He said, sir, I had a discussion with NFRA about the audit profession and the quality of audit. There are two things I have told them. I said, what are those two things? He said, one is fees and the other is time for an audit. Auditors need to be paid more. Second, we need to get more time, and therefore we have to ensure that unaudited results are published within 60 days and audited results within 90 days. I was aghast. This is the world of how professionals think. Can you imagine if you're a passenger flying in an aircraft and the airline says, we want to make it very safe. So we will take 2 hours for the aircraft to turn around every time it comes to a destination before it goes to the next, as opposed to the way they are. Are you going to wait for it? No, you're going to take a train and go or do some other way. You'll move ahead. So we can't ask for time. You need to use technology to reduce the time for audit. The world is not going to wait. Similarly, fees is rate per hour. It's not going to be there anymore. With the press of a button, if I can examine 1 million transactions, how does rate per hour matter? This is the future. This is how we need to start thinking. Coupled with, now you add to this AI, cloud computing, sensors, nanotechnology, which I spoke about, newer and newer tools and newer businesses which will push changes in laws, regulations, business structures, human behavior. What does this all tell us? That business as usual is becoming business unusual. That's the reality. And where are we as a profession? I'm sorry to say this if I am sounding critical. We are locked in time as a profession for 75, as an audit and accounting profession for 75 years. And I've said this of the accounting profession yesterday to a forum of international professors of accounting at an IIM. I said, you are, as if the clock has stopped for you in accounting. 75 years ago, the world was different. Now it is different. Has accounting standard changed? No. Medical science has changed, where they say a certain drug which you used to take is no longer appropriate for you. Maybe it's harmful for you, research has proved. Where is research in accounting? Where is research in auditing happening? We have the same accounting standard on property, plant and equipment, even though we are moving to nanotechnology. Those principles, we accountants believe, are cast in stone and will remain in the Stone Age if it is cast in stone, and that's why it's called the Stone Age. We are not in the digital age. So sadly, we seem to be oblivious of this development. I'll give you one more illustration, though I'm taking a bit of time. I retired and I wanted to surrender my certificate of practice, so I wrote to the institute saying, please, I would like to surrender my certificate of practice. Sure enough, I get an email saying, please send us your original certificate of practice. I said, look, no, I practiced all these years, no client asked me for my original certificate of practice. Now, when I want to surrender my certificate of practice, you have to surrender the original certificate in a digital age. Then she writes again, no sir, please make efforts to search. I said, I'll rather surrender my membership than surrender my certificate of practice. So this is the thinking which we need to do this. And when I talked of reading, you know, when we talk, say Google talk to books, for instance, it lets AI answer you a question. And how does AI respond? It responds by reading 120,000 books in half a second and providing the answer. That is the power of technology. 120,000 books are scanned in half a second and you get an answer. Shouldn't this change our profession? Shouldn't this impact the way we do our audits? If these are the threats, we need to convert them into opportunities. There are many things which we need to do. And just to give you some illustrations, we deal with data. The world today generates 18 billion gigabytes of data every day. When I started the audit profession, look at the pace of technology. When I got into this profession in the 70s, if you looked at the number of transistors in a chip to what it is today, it is multiplied by 10 million. The number of transistors in a chip today from what it was 50 years ago. That's the power, what is packed into a chip. And if you look at the power of the chip, it has gone up 17 billion times. Your mobile today is more powerful than the computer which was used to send man onto the moon. If this doesn't shake the profession of accounting and auditing, what else should shake? Sit back and let's visualize this impact of technology, because your very relevance is under consideration. We may not have all the answers, but we shouldn't bury our heads in sand and hope that this problem will go away. You know, typically we tend to be in a denial mode. It doesn't affect me. It affects everybody but me. And that is the unfortunate part. So what do we need to do? We'll hear from the eminent panelists for sure. But at the least we can do is recognize the fact that technology will impact us. The least we should do is start thinking of the future and researching in the future. What does the future look like? What do we do? Will it look what it was in 1949? Surely not. Today when you get up in the morning, you touch your mobile phone. When you go to bed, you touch your mobile phone. Your mobile phone, as you know, is everything. That's just the beginning of what we are seeing. And we are still at the beginning of AI. We have not even moved to artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, where enough research has gone in, enough development has gone in, which is coming close to replicating the human brain. So leave aside anything else. The next few years itself will be transformational years. And whilst I may not live to see all of that, but the younger generation which is there, it's both exciting for them, and what they do in the next few years will determine the survival of the very profession itself. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll hand over to the others for the opening remarks. Girish, may I request you? You can speak from there or you can come here for your opening remark.
Hi, good morning. I qualified as a chartered accountant almost 40 years ago. And I'm really blessed that I'm here at such auspicious occasion to speak to all of you. From a very different perspective, because for the last 25 years I have not been part of the accounting or auditing profession. I've been on the business side and then, of course, helping management on the board side. And when I met with many of you today and some of my panelist members, there has been this discussion about how will technology impact auditing, including a question about whether auditing will remain relevant at all or not, 5 years, 10 years from now. But before we go there, I just wanted to record one thing, that when I passed out as a chartered accountant, I was kind of always in awe that the standards of profession were very high. A very small percentage of people actually passed the exam at the first attempt. It was always a kind of a mark of your capability if you kind of quickly passed out and joined the profession. When I meet many of the youngsters today who are passed out, I'm really glad to see that the same dedication, the same excellence still persists. So the institute has managed to maintain the same level of exclusivity in the profession, which is very good to see. And in some ways, when I kind of try to relate it to the industry that I was part of on the IT side, I see the same opportunity and the potential that we have a large pool of talented young people who are professionally qualified, who have kind of learned it through the apprenticeship model, which is not common in many industries. They have actually worked as an article, kind of learned their skills and combined technical knowledge with practical work, and then they have qualified as chartered accountants. And while there are many opportunities in India, and the previous session kind of talked about the Amrit Kal and what a great opportunity India is going to present to all of you, I sometimes feel that the India opportunity is great, but there is a greater opportunity outside India as well. Because in many countries outside, either the level of technological competence is not there, or the professional knowledge is missing. And in many Western countries, actually accounting is not a preferred profession. So number of people who are qualifying as accountants actually coming down. I think US, this was the first year where number of qualified accountants actually fell. So if you take on one hand the vast pool of very talented and capable people that we have in this country, and you marry with the technology competence that we have here, why is it that we cannot create an opportunity outside globally? I'm not saying in a particular country. Of course, we don't have the kind of opportunity that the technology people had with Y2K, which created an impetus. And there is also more regulatory pressure as compared to in the technology industry. But who knows? Like we have seen with Aadhaar and UPI, we can create a very different type of opportunity for ourselves. So while on one hand we worry about what technology will do to the profession and how much work will still be there, I think if people kind of upgrade their skills and capabilities, especially on the technology side, I think the opportunity may not be in India alone, it may be on the global stage. And my kind of hope and is that all of you will work towards creating that kind of opportunity so that just as India is known globally on the technology side, India is known not only for technology but also its entire professional capability on accounting, auditing, and on the financial side. So I'll stop here and I'll request my next speaker to join.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Giridharan from Reserve Bank of India, working in the Department of Supervision. So I started my career in Reserve Bank 20 years back in payment systems area, and then subsequently moved to the internal audit, where I was looking into the IS audit part predominantly, and then last 7-8 years into the supervision of banks. So my role currently for the past 5-6 years has been into the regulation as well as supervision of cyber security as well as IT in our supervised entities, predominantly commercial banks, urban cooperative banks, and non-banking financial companies. So, so my thoughts would be related to the IT aspects, technology, the risk that is involved, and what could be our expectations, and what is that the auditors or the chartered accountants can also look into, which are very relevant for you. So I'll give a broad perspective on that. Just to give an introduction to the evolution of the regulation into these areas. So the Reserve Bank broadly, as a regulator, also is developing the financial sector, so contributing to both development as well as a regulator. So in the regulation, it takes care of the innovation and ensuring that the innovation is non-disruptive in manner, and also while doing it, the customer protection is ensured for the overall financial stability. So these are primary objectives in which our regulation is focused on. So if we start our regulation specific into the IT areas and the technology evolution from the banking sector post the computerization, so we came out with certain guidelines on the computer audits. In fact, that was one of the very early requirements of the RBI on the audit of computer systems, and that was even prior to 2004-05, and subsequently we came out with several guidelines on more on electronic banking, because the evolution in the technology side at the banks started with automated ledgers. It moved on to the total branch automation system softwares, and then the core banking solutions, and digital banking, you can call it internet banking, mobile banking, open banking, and the technologies that are supporting. Today we have the clouds, AIs, and so the process has sort of modified from the manual to the automated ones, but the process remains, it continues to remain, the banking continues to remain, and therefore the role of auditors in ensuring that the business process, the underlying systems, the internal controls, and the overall financial reporting is stable. So the tools that maybe you would be operating with or evaluating could differ, could modify, could change over a period of time, but the essential auditing itself does not undergo a change. So that continues to be more relevant today, in fact, even more relevant today. From the innovation part, if you see after the internet mobile bankings, so to encourage the fintech revolutions, so there was a guideline specific for the account aggregators, the crowdfunding peer-to-peer lending types, and supportingly the institutions that RBI set up, because it's setting up several institutions since 1996 from, we call it IDRBIT, Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technologies, which is also acted a very important role in establishing the National Financial Institution Infinite Network, the core backbone of today's financial systems, especially for the banks. And other institutions like we have set up REBIT specifically for supporting the information IT audits, innovation part, RB innovation hubs that was set up recently, again to encourage innovations, and the fintech department that evolved to support the fintech companies, regulating them, and these aspects. So while one side the evolution of institutions, the regulation came up, on the other side, from the supervisory angle, from the regulatory angle, the regulations on cybersecurity, the regulations on SWIFT related controls, ATM switch related controls, IT governance, outsourcing related risks. So these are very essential risks that are coming up. The related frauds, which I will be discussing subsequently, are also have started increasing. So the regulation was trying to support the risk that is getting evolved over a period of time, and the current challenges faced not only by the customers but also at the institution level. It could be both types of cyber related threats that we are facing, and how do we address them, both from ensuring that the financial stability is ensured and also the customer protection is ensured. So I think this would be my brief intro for how the regulation has evolved, the challenges that we will be facing, and what we expect as an auditors to provide assurance and also ensure that the assurance is continuously provided across all stages of the life cycle of any application or any support system that is getting developed. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll sit here and do it. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I'm not talking to humans. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, thank you so much. First of all, I actually want to thank the entire team of BCAS for inviting me here. As you can see that today I feel a little bit inferior, and I'll talk to you about why I feel inferior. But before that, I tell you that why I feel excited about being here. I think this is one of the best events I have attended in my professional career. So round of applause to you. So big thanks to BCS, Managing Committee, President, whoever is behind this. I think this is great. There are two very significant reasons I want to say that why is it the best. One, of course, I think you got a wonderful lineup of speakers before me. So now the road is downhill from here. But really, it was a very exciting, engaging discussion yesterday, today morning, etc. But the reason why I'll call you the best is because normally I go to the events and they give the memento or award at the end. You give at the beginning, so irrespective of my performance, I get something, so I'm very happy about it. So I think you guys are very good. So by that definition, when I heard about my association with BCS has not been there, because as you can see, I'm the only Mr. here, so maybe some of the, so I feel inferior a little bit. I'm not a CA. But when I heard first time, I thought it's called Best CA Society. I didn't think it was called Bombay CA Society. So maybe you should consider, you can use Bombay or Best as you like, because I think there are a lot of people outside of Bombay. So truly a best CA society I have seen so far. But I'll tell you there are two significant disadvantages I start today's discussion. The first one, I told you that I'm not a CA, which is like a disadvantage. The second one is I actually got my wisdom tooth removed a few days ago. So if I sound less wise, it's genetically deficient. So not that my thoughts have become less wise, but I think that's really important. Talking about the future of profession, the auditing profession and technology, I think Mr. Ramesh talked very eloquently about how various technological improvements have happened in life and how certain things have happened. But I would like to take a slightly contrarian view to the past technological changes we have seen, the likes of printing press and others, to what it is today, is because we are also seeing a lot of technology companies which are fueled by the people who were sitting an hour before me here with a huge amount of investor capital, and they have a very different outcome orientation than what possibly the printing press and calculators and all that time had. Let me ask you a question, show of hands, and genuine show of hands. Imagine, now all of you are very busy chartered accountants. Imagine I could put a button on your email system, whether you use Outlook, Google, whatever. So imagine I could put a button in your Outlook system. By pressing that button, you write 3 bullet points, and then it creates a very detailed email, very articulate, and does it. Show me of hands, how many of you would like that button with just 3 bullet points, and it creates a very nice, eloquent email? Okay, I think everybody would love it. Now, show of hands of all those who receive a long email and say, give me a button which I can compress into 3 bullet points. So why are we chasing this technology? On one side, we take 3 bullet points and make it a long email, and the other side, the recipient says that make this long email and make it 3 bullet. So karna kya chahte ho yaar? Decide to kar lo. Thank you so much. I actually love claps, so if you give me once in between, I'm actually more of a performer than contributor, so I think in some ways you will, like the way you're giving Shan, I don't get that level, but I aspire that if BCAs give me a platform, maybe in 75 years from now, I'll get there, but I'll try. So that's the one thing where I'm saying, thank you so much. One thing I'm saying that we are chasing a lot of technology for the sake of technology. Just give you some data points. 1975 till 2018, there's a data which tracks non-farm productivity of US businesses. Because the farm productivity has happened because of technology, the tractor came and all that, but non-farm productivity of US workforce. And they've tracked saying what is the correlation between the investment in technology and the productivity of those professions. And you'll be surprised to know that there is actually no ROI. For every dollar invested in technology, the productivity gain has been less than $1. Let me repeat it. For almost 45 years, every dollar invested in technology has had negative return. It hasn't returned $1. Now, of course, there are very many hypotheses which prove that data, saying that, it's not just that, the productivity doesn't improve, doesn't mean that, technology hasn't improved. Technology has improved a lot of our lives, but complexity has increased, thermodynamics, law of entropy, etc., etc. So I'm not bashing technology. By the way, I make all my money on technology, so I'm a technology guy. But I'm telling you that technology for the sake of technology is not a good idea. So that's the first point I wanted to make here. The second thing which I want to say that, all of us are actually in the business of trust. I don't think that we are in the business of technology. Okay, we are in the business of trust. Now, trust is a very important and many a times over-positioned factor. I want to again take cues from Mr. Shah, who was there sitting here this morning, and I really admired the way he kind of talked some of these interesting story about Kumbhakaran, Ramayana, and all of that. So I thought I'll also share my Ramayana story with you. Okay. Of course, the history tells us that, let's maybe talk about Mahabharata. Why Ramayana? He's talked about Ramayana. Let me talk about Mahabharata story. History has told us that Kauravas were defeated by Pandavas. Even though Kauravas were very strong, Pandavas were not that strong at that point in time. They had all the army. But if you notice one big thing which the Pandavas had and the Kauravas didn't have is not the 5 Pandavas, not the chariot, not the driver of the chariot, Lord Krishna. But do you remember who was sitting on the flag of that chariot? It was Lord Hanuman. So Lord Hanuman, sitting on that chariot, did not fight. He did not take any weapon out. He did not participate in fight. But that is the stamp of trust. So you are the Lord Hanuman sitting on the companies, which are public companies, private companies, and all of that. And please understand that power, that stamp, that Lord Hanuman on that percham, on that flag, is what the investors, the regulators, and the clients are looking for. And therefore, coming back to we being in the business of trust, how can technology improve trust? Let's talk about that for a bit. First and foremost, I will tell you that there's a lot of technology being applied in today's profession, which is actually driving one dimension of the profession, which is efficiency. And please pay a little bit of attention when saying, if you look at all the, and I do a lot of work in this area, if you look at all the technology solutions available in the world about auditing technology, 9 out of 10 of those systems are actually hitting the efficiency dimension. So what they're saying that use this technology, so instead of you taking 10 hours to analyze these vouchers, you can do it in 10 minutes. Use this technology, it will record your data forever so that you can retrieve them fast. Use this technology, it will have the whole workflow built in, digital record and all that. They're all making your task faster. But which is the technology which is making your task effective? The trust which is required by the investors, by the shareholders, by the regulators is not do it fast. It's required that make it better. Can I make the outcome of an audit process more effective and not just efficient? I'm not saying that efficiency is not required. Efficiency is required. We all need to get better. But are we hitting the effectiveness dimension of the technology? I think that's a very big question. And the reason I'll tell you why we are not hitting is because a lot of technology which is coming into the auditing profession isn't being built for the audit by the auditors. I think we are the, what they call the byproduct user of technology. There's a lot of technology which is coming for the accounting, for the reporting, and by the way, we also end up using that for auditing. And therefore, this technology isn't directly suited for auditing profession, and then we end up taking the advantage of that from an efficiency dimension and not so much from the effectiveness dimension. So if I were to take you back in life, I think we are at a point, and let me take you back about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, the most paid person in a company was the CEO. Or you may say that even today also the most paid person in a company is CEO. But that CEO 100 years ago was different than today's CEO. It wasn't Chief Executive Officer. It was Chief Electricity Officer. Go back 100 years, all the plants were not run by electricity. They were run by steam. And suddenly electricity came. So electricity said that no longer you have pollution, no longer you have this thing. But the biggest problem at that point with the electricity was that it was hugely dangerous. So those of you who followed the history, there was a big debate, should we have an alternative current or should we have direct current? Tesla versus Edison, there was a major fight. And they were all trying to prove each other wrong. And that's the technology fight which we have where one technology is trying to prove the other wrong. And therefore, we needed a chief electricity officer saying that I love this technology, but it's not safe. Can you make it safe? So I think we are also in that area where there's the new technology in auditing profession is like the electricity. But we need people who understand the dangers of that technology and what that technology can go wrong. And that is what I think we need to really look at. The last point, possibly I'll try and converge out here, is that there is a lot of technology which we are trying to use for dealing with things which are normal. But we all know, and I'm sure you know more than I do, is that no amount of procedure can sometimes substitute for the management integrity. If the management decides to cheat, there is no way, or I wouldn't say there's no way, it's very, very, very hard to actually substitute that. Although there are procedures, there's skepticism, there are many things, etc., etc. I would like to talk about, there are a few things. In fact, again, this morning, there was a discussion about how gold is being smuggled and we becoming the net exporter rather than being the importer of capital in that sense. I was looking at some data points. The smuggling of gold. How did the gold smuggling start to happen? So in the earlier days, the gold smuggling used to happen, people used to bring gold in their bags. And the customs officer became smart, saying, let's put technology and we will have metal detectors. So the metal detector was a technology solution to what I would call the integrity of those smugglers. And that technology solved that problem. The criminals became smarter. They said, oh, we really don't need to do that. So they actually came up with boxes which will hold the metal, but the box itself is not detectable by metal detector. And then that technology could fool the customs officer, possibly for another 5-6 years. Those officers became smart. They found better machines which they could actually take that care of that. The criminals said, oh, this is not working anymore. So they started to put gold in the form of capsules, and I don't want to tell you in graphic details, but that capsule will be put underneath their canals in the human body, and then say, okay, this is how we kind of this. And people started to track that as well. And now what is the latest? To fool the customs officer, there are clothes which are actually dipped in liquid gold, and there is no technology available today to actually solve. So the point I'm trying to make that if there's a management intent to commit a fraud, I don't think that we can rely on technology to completely eliminate those frauds. So therefore, the human judgment, the auditor skepticism, the ability to look at that, I think is going to be superlatively important. But having said that, will it have a change on the profession? Absolutely yes. Because if we continue to live in the old way of doing auditing, I think we will become very difficult to just sustain. At least the efficiency dimension for us has to come up. But more than efficiency dimension, the winner in this will not be all of us. I think the winner in this will be those who actually take the efficiency dimension of auditing technology and also the effectiveness dimension of auditing technology, and not rely on technology for the sake of technology, but technology built by the auditors, for the benefit of our investors. Thank you.
Akhilesh, thank you. I think, thank you for your contrarian view. Let me respond to that, and maybe the first question, therefore, will get directed to you. The debate as to whether technology is good or bad is, the judgment is still out. And yes, there are advantages of technology. There are dangers of technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or developments in biotechnology. There is no doubt about it. But the reality is that the days of advanced technology are here to stay. We have a choice whether we respond to it or not respond to it. And that will determine the future of any profession. You spoke of trust and the symbol of trust being Lord Hanuman in the flag. Let me give you an example to perhaps, counter that in a way. I am a frequent traveler using airports. what was the evidence of trust or verification in the past? I had to go through, show my ID, show my boarding pass. It used to be stamped. My baggage had to be screened. I had to put a baggage tag. It had to be stamped. Even at the boarding gate, if the baggage tag did not have a stamp, I was sent back. Or if the baggage tag, hand baggage tag disappeared, I was sent back. Where are we today? With Digi Yatra, you walk into Bangalore airport, for instance. You don't need anything, your face. You just walk into the Digi Yatra, your face, the gate opens. You go to the security area, your face, out again. Where is that symbol of trust? Where is the man there who was stamping it and saying, I have verified this document? That is what point I'm trying to drive home to auditors. Audit profession audits what they are seeing. My question is, what will they be able to see in future if we are in a complex digital world where you don't see documents, you don't see transactions happening, you don't see assets? Shouldn't we be prepared for that world, and will we be wanted? And leading from that, my question to you is, how effectively is technology being used by the audit profession today? What is it auditors need to do to make audits more effective, not compliant with the standards? Audit more effective is a completely different, as you yourself described. And whilst on that, if you can tell us your vision of what you see is the future business environment and where you see audit profession for 10 to 15 years from now. How much of AI will be used? We seem to have AI in everything, even in texting it automatically. You gave the example of email, you saw the number of hands which were raised. The fact is they liked to have AI even though it was longer. They also responded by saying they wanted shorter, more comprehensive because they want to move on. Now, would you want AI to get into audit, or do you want the human to sit there, look at documents the traditional way and spend days and months and trying to come up with an opinion? The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think, let me first give a short answer to your very, very critical question, saying, will we continue to do what we are doing? The answer is absolutely no. Because if we continue to do what we are doing, we will perish. And sometimes it may look, very easy, but actually the reality is, if it's like, when the change is very dramatic, we can sense it, but when the change is continuous, we don't see it. We all have seen or heard about the story of the frog. If you put the frog in a boiling water, it just comes out. But if you put the frog in a warm water and continue to increase the temperature 1 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree, it just dies. So I think those of us who in the profession who don't change, I think will be the frog which will get boiled down, because the technological change, there's another very famous saying that we tend to overestimate the technology in the short term but underestimate the technology in the long term. So the long term changes in technology will happen. Therefore, there is no shortcut for us to improve the way of how we work with technology and how we do it. Coming back to your example of Digi Yatra and trust, I'm not at all suggesting that the trust symbols should remain physical. The trust symbol should become digital. But the problem which I'm seeing, there are three kinds of technologies, not just in auditing, but any profession. One is that a technology which automates the existing process as is. The other is a technology which slightly takes the advantage and moves it a little further. And third one, it says, this process is irrelevant and the technology does it completely differently. So those are the three different types, and they don't have to necessarily be linear. They can be all non-linear, etc., etc. But I'll give you an example. Again, I love to tell stories, so I'll tell you the story. This is a story of a guy who actually is selling watermelons I live in Gurgaon. So in Gurgaon Road, you can go and buy watermelon. And there's a friend of mine who told me this story, and he went to go buy watermelon from this guy and says, can you give me the one which is sweeter? He says, of course, sir, I can give you a sweet watermelon. He picks up the watermelon, taps it, leaves it down. Picks up another watermelon, taps it, leaves it down. Picks up the third one, taps it, and says, sir, this is the sweetest watermelon. And the guy actually goes home and finds it was very sweet. Next day he comes to him again. And next day he does the same thing. Tap it, push it down, tap it, put it down, and tap it and give it to him. He says, can you tell me, because I want to learn the trick of how you identify these sweeter watermelons. And he says, sir, today I'm free and I'm also being generous, so I'll give you the real secret. My dad told me, saying that whenever somebody comes and asks, saying, give me a sweeter watermelon, Pick up one, put it down, pick up two, put it down, pick up third one. Whatever the sound is, the third one will be sweeter. And that is what today's bad technology in auditing is doing. It is automating a process which is so manual, says, do this. I think where the technology should and will make the big difference is today's technology, today's the auditing world, again, I'm just generalizing number, 80% of the time is being spent on doing routine things and 20% on that judgment. Technology should certainly take away that 80% and make it 20% and allow us to give that 80% time as chartered accountants and auditors to say, can I now apply my judgment and do it? But that is just one game. The better game would be if the technology could tell me, saying that, for a banking type of transaction, this is how I should be looking at it. Even though every transaction is hitting the right debit credits, but is it hitting in a way in the context of that business? I think that technology will change the game. But today's technology will take away 80% to 20%, give us more time and judgment. But here I want to tell you that there is no amount of technology in my lifetime will actually make audit profession by humans redundant. Absolutely not. It will require us to change, but it will not make us redundant completely. And I want to say, I actually read it, what you've written here says that, na bhayam chasti jagratam. It basically says that the one who's jagrat doesn't need to fear, but those of you who are sleeping and not listening to what Mr. Ramesh is saying, you will actually perish for sure.
Thank you, Akhilesh. I think you did have some muted claps when we talk of the future of the audit profession. We'll come back to you on that. Now let me move on to Girish.
But let me just add one point. I think this is absolutely right, that technology will take away the manual effort, where 80% of the effort of any auditor is really spent on. And I think that's going to make a huge difference, because what will happen is that people will start thinking, what will I use my time for? Which is what is not happening today as much. That the critical thinking will change. People will stop saying that I'm adding value by doing routine work, and that is necessary because only after I do the routine work, somebody senior can apply his mind. That model will change. Everybody will have to do high-level work, and because the routine work will get automated. So it may mean that you will need much higher order thinking and ability to do critical thinking right from beginning. Today we have a situation where youngsters do the routine work, senior people do the thinking or the more critical work. That gap may kind of narrowed substantially.
So let me frame my questions for you, and you can supplement what you are saying. We keep talking about the future of the audit profession and the audit profession. My question to you, which you can answer maybe towards the end, is what is that audit profession? Who is the auditor who will be doing it? Is it a technology company? Is it somebody with a CA qualification? Because if we are talking all of this of technology, yeah, the term audit in terms of having a verification is fine. But will the audit profession be the same as what it is today? Therefore, my question is, what is, in your opinion, the current state? Second is, what is the purpose of audit? Do you think the purpose itself needs to undergo a change? And third, leading from what you're saying and from what I've been hearing, auditors today go and verify what is given to them, correct? That's what we expect. And you answered saying 80% of the time we do routine, 20% of the time we do specials, or with technology 80% is free. My simple question is, why should auditors walk in to verify what is shown to them? Shouldn't auditors be able to walk in with an expectation of what they should be seeing? I should be able to walk in and say, expect whether there should be one bottle or there should be 3 bottles. Not that I'm given one bottle, I verified this one bottle, I'm fine, this one bottle is true and fair. Should it be 3? Should it be half? Should there be no bottle? Is an auditor with the volume of 80 billion gigabytes of data which is there in the world every day, which is being added, doesn't he have the obligation to draw upon that data before he gets into an audit to walk in with expectations? Is it being done? So what do you see is the future of auditing given all of this?
I think what you said is very true, that auditors today verify what is presented to them. And in some ways that is different from what the financial analysts do. They kind of predict what the numbers should be, and then the management says why that number is there or not there, higher or lower.
The analysts predict.
Yeah.
But the auditor is not walking into with a prediction.
So I'm coming to that.
And he spends more time inside.
So I'm saying there is a little difference in role. The analysts, financial analysts who covers listed companies predict what your company's profit, sales, etc. will be. And the management stands up and says, yes, that number I could not meet or did better than that, whatever else it is. So they have a model. All analysts have a model to predict what numbers are likely to be. Auditors today don't have a model. They don't have a model to say what the numbers should be. They simply verify what is there to say whether what the management is saying is the number is the actual number. So I would say the roles, first of all, are a little different. The auditors are vouching in some ways that what management is representing to be the financial result is actually the financial result, so that somebody else can then question whether numbers which were predicted have been met or not met, or have they done better or worse, as the case may be. So I think that part of providing credence to the numbers which are being presented to management is certainly a value that will continue to be provided by the auditors, especially in the context of two things. One is not only, even if everything is absolutely correct and all the numbers are correctly calculated and presented, the two differences are, one is in many businesses there are a lot of estimates that are used, and somebody has to be able to comment and say whether those estimates are valid estimates or not, and whether that is, therefore the numbers are right or not right. The other thing I worry about is a lot of managements use what they call pro forma results. And this is especially true in the startup economy and in the tech economy, where apart from what is published as financial results, management really lives by what they call pro forma results. And therefore, there is somebody who should be able to say that, I don't know about, at least these are the financial results, and somebody has to stand up and explain what these numbers are. And I think that part of role of auditors will always be there, which is, as I said, a mark of trust on the numbers. Is it perfect today? Do auditors are able to always understand the business enough to say whether those numbers are sound right or not? I think that is where I would say that the additional layer of I think you will have to either transform yourself into technologist or hire enough technologists in your team to be able to say that the production function by which these numbers are generated actually makes sense or is safe and is kind of giving you the right result.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Just one dimension I want to add to a point which you made, and I think you kind of covered that very well. There is a very powerful technological ability which even can exist today or which we possibly haven't leveraged enough. For example, in the classical world, auditors rely less, as you said, that the information presented versus third-party verifications. Yes, you take all the information as well, but you go bank verification, you do creditors verification, etc. What if that entire part was digitized without the need for verification through complete automation? Because today we've got GST, e-invoicing has happened in the country. So why do I need to rely on the revenue projections or revenue data which comes out of your invoices in your system as presented to the auditor? Why could we not do a substantive level of check because the GSTN has all that information? Or for example, all the treasury investment, if they are sitting in DMAT form, whether it's sitting in CDSL, NSDL, that's verifiable, or all the information. So I think there's a power in using the ecosystem technology to make the audit a lot more effective, because as you rightly said, that if you only rely on the information as presented to the auditor, it'll be limited.
That's exactly the point I was striving to drive home in terms of purpose of the audit and the methodology. Today, even in tax returns, your AIS is so powerful. The information is already there. It's all pre-populated. So the question, it begs the question is, do you need a tax specialist to file your return? Just like, do you need an auditor to validate? And why I was pushing the point on analysts, if analysts are able to predict results with reasonable accuracy, why do we need an auditor then to say, yeah, this is fine? If the frauds are good, we can debate those questions. And leading to a question which I can request Girish to respond very quickly, is should we have accountants to be aware of technology, or are we seeing days when we need to teach accounting to technology techies so that they are able to do audits more effectively? I mean, I'm just looking at the future of the profession. Who is in the profession?
No, I think you need both the skills. You need accounting knowledge, you need technology skills. Whether that can be found in one individual, or you need to have a team which somebody does the technology work and somebody does the accounting work. I think that is open to each team and how they want to do it, but you need to have a mixed team. Because if you think of most large companies today, bulk of the infrastructure that produces the information which all of you audit is actually produced by machines and by algorithms. And unless you understand the machines and the algorithms, you're taking one hell of a risk in just signing off on the numbers.
Yeah. So let's move on to the regulators. Mr. Giridharan, the auditors are expected to be the eyes and ears of the regulators, right? We have heard all what the auditors do just now, and you've also described how regulations are shaping. Are you satisfied with the contribution of the audit profession? And do you believe the profession needs to do more? And what do you think the profession should be doing for the future in the high-tech world which you have so eloquently spoken about?
Yeah. So let me just broaden the scope of what we define as a transaction. So you get into that transaction and you audit. The scope of transaction in the IT world is much broadened because of the threats that the sector faces. I'll give a brief perspective of the threats that the sector is facing and the actions that the regulator has taken and what we expect from the auditor in the current cyber threat landscape, so that I will be appreciating it in a better way. So if I just go back to 2016-17, we have seen several cases of how an ATM machine, what we are seeing for, it used to dispense cash without a card. We call it as a cash spitting type of attacks. And then the controls were related to the securing the ATM machines. And there were attacks subsequently about how the transaction flowing between an ATM machine and an ATM switch was getting sort of sniffed out of it. And then I also take a card and then I clone a card and then do a transactions. Then we need to secure that particular layer between the machine and the ATM switch. And then we moved on, we saw Swift related attacks which are also in the public domain. You would have seen globally also there were a number of attacks on the Swift. Then the controls that were required for Swift, again when we say about the high-tech attacks, globally if you see all major attacks happens through some types of email phishing type of attacks. That means somebody who is inside the network gets an email and inadvertently person inside the network clicks it, a malware gets downloaded, it talks to something, we call it CNC, and then the malware moves laterally, and all those things are technical. But then the elementary thing is somebody is clicking an email, that means somebody doesn't know that this email is not a genuine, it is a phishing email. Now what is the control? The control for it is, again, it's basic on the naked eye. There are no technology controls that can fully overcome the spoofing types of attacks. There are certain things, but then it's majorly the manual-based controls which should identify whether it is a spoofed or non-spoofed. So there is a transaction here. Then we move on to types of attacks on cooperative banks. So urban cooperative banks, we broadly classify it into 4 layers. The one who is directly sort of member of an RTGS, NEFT, who owns an ATM switch, Swift. So his digital depth is much higher, so he requires greater focus. Then someone who is just a member of RTGS, NEFT, little lesser. Somebody who is not directly talking to the critical payment systems, but then he is coming through a sponsor bank, but he still offers an internet banking, mobile banking, so he has some exposure on the internet or public domain. So his threat level is different, but he needs to be having adequate controls. And the one who doesn't have anything, on branch banking type of UCB, but still they are more vulnerable. That means still they can get compromised. So if multiple attacks are being seen, and coming to the payment systems, major attack happens on the payment ecosystem where the fraudster can really attack the system and then siphon off the money. But we are again moving towards different types of broad vulnerabilities. So globally, if you see, there are 3 types of attacks. One that is resulting into a loss of financial value for the organization. They lose money. Second, there is a service unavailability, disruption of service. That means there is no financial loss, but there is some disruption of service. So that impacts the customer. The third, there is an integrity loss. There is a data loss, data leakage. So what the personal data protection also discusses about the data security and all. That means there is no financial loss, there is no integrity loss in the sense of availability, but there is a data loss. But these happens predominantly due to an underlying transaction for the financial absence of reconciliation. So we have seen several instances where due to absence of adequate reconciliation, a timely reconciliation, these frauds have happened. That means our expectation again is going back to the transaction is a financial transaction. Nevertheless, the audit has to check on the reconciliation mechanism, how effective or how robust is. So even in the LFAR, which we had seen for the commercial banks, we had seen 3 different things that are our expectations for auditors. That is a robust IT systems, check for that. Policies, whether it's adequate or not, check for that, and the critical systems, IT processes, whether they are effective or not. So how do we check it? So underlying thing for addressing these types of cyber threats is again monitoring the effective reconciliation. Change management becomes very, very essential. Now the transaction here is change management. It's not a financial transaction, but a change management. And many institutions, banks have now started concurrent audit of their data centers. So you used to have concurrent audits in the branch. Now they have a concept of concurrent audits of the data centers. They have a continuous audit. Observability is a key word that is being used to see that whether I'm able to monitor the systems on a continuous basis. So whether the banks are able to do, whether the institutions are able to do that, again from the availability factor. So you check for the transactions. These are the transactions which you are required to check. For example, if you take a payment transaction, again we have seen major, some of the cooperative banks which was impacted, which is there in the public domain. A simple check that establishes a reconciliation of what is shown to an auditor vis-a-vis what is the single source of truth for that particular transaction could have also been very effective. For example, let us say that you receive the list of borrowers' transactions and you are supposed to verify it, see for that correctness of it. Now there are some outflows from the account. It could be through NEFT, RTGS, but whether it is complete, how do you check for it? So the alternate system for the bank auditors are to check for the SFMS or NEFT, RTGS gateways. So with the systems are maintained by the bank, the transactions that are recorded are complete. So you have on the right side the transactions that is outflowing or inflow. On the left side, you get an output from CBS. You reconcile both. You see whether the data that is given to the auditor is complete or not. But in the current setup, you have billions of transactions. Then how do you go for it? And there are several data analytics tools which gives a lot of predictive analysis. Several tools that help you in fraud risk management, which helps you to identify the anomaly detection, all AI-driven tools. So when we say that whether AI would replace the auditing, I would say that the AI would facilitate the audit job in a more efficient and effective manner, provided the auditors also are equipping themselves to use the tools. So the cats that we used to talk 20 years back, now we have advanced tools where you can just pull in these types of transactions and then reconcile them on a real or a near real-time manner in case there is concept of continuous audit for which you are doing. So coming to that, the recent requirement of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, what is the essence there is that you need to protect the customer data. Now, the protection of customer data was discussed in our 2016 cybersecurity framework itself. The first elementary aspect is inventory asset management. So, little into the technology part, I'm not getting into that. The National Institute of Science and Technology, the NIST framework, which globally almost every organization uses, similar frameworks are there in ISOs and other things, but all are, you can map one to other. The first control or first pillar of function for them is identify. So that means I need to identify all the assets. Once I'm able to identify these are the assets, then I'm able to put necessary controls, whether I want to put a preventive type of control, a detective type of control, or even for our incident response and recovery part. That means the essential part is identifying the assets. Assets does not mean only hardware, it could include software, it could include customer data as well. So, how the banks, how the financial institutions are gearing themselves to comply with the DPDP Act. So you, as an auditor, you can check whether they have appropriate inventory of assets, how they are inventorizing, how they are ensuring that the particular data which is stored either at their end or at the third party end is captured with appropriate asset classification. So according to the asset classification, I need to provide exact control, whether I need to encrypt, mask, pseudonymize, anonymize, redact, all those things. So the controls could vary depending upon the criticality of the asset. That again is a transaction level of audit which you may require to do, because the risk lies there. The loss could be on the data leakage, data loss. You have the implications of ransomware to that. There is something called the triple order extortions. It's not just that data is encrypted to have a denial of service. Data is first exfiltrated to again ask for ransomware for not leaking it. The third type is that the exfiltrated data could be of the customers, where the adversaries could also ask for ransom from the customers whose sensitive data is leaked. That means this is the current threat, and how do we address it from the auditor's angle to review it, to evaluate the types of transactions that is put in through to protect these types of assets. So I think this is what I would say that the auditing, when we are going forward, have to mix along with the financial audit. So it cannot remain standalone. You need to see the IT risk, the cyber risk, the oversight of the board for the IT risk, the oversight of the board over the third party, the effectiveness of the audit committees, the effectiveness of the senior management, how they are reviewing these things, and what is the underlying risk in terms of financial, in terms of non-financial. Both has to be appreciated and going forward.
So, Mr. Giridharan, if I may seek a quick summary from you. We have different types of audit as you described: concurrent audit, internal audit, systems audit, statutory audit, all of it. Looking ahead, which of these audits you think would be the most prevalent? A simple analogy would be, would you recommend that we invest more in fire alarms or in fire extinguishers? What would you invest in?
So the audit, I would say, has to be sort of trying to support the preventive control rather than as a detective control, because these types of attacks that we are seeing, for example, in a particular instance, in less than 3 hours, nearly 70 crore was siphoned off. So this is the impact which a cyber threat can happen, unlike a credit risk or a market risk or a liquidity risk, which it doesn't happen so instantaneously. That means I cannot see auditor as a detective to say, okay, something has happened, now what you can do to correct it, or as a deterrent control. It has to be a preventive in nature. So when auditing has to be looking into the preventive aspects, which is very essential. The preventive are more robust, more secure, but more stringent as well. That means I am, for example, I don't allow internet access, just for hypothetically. That
so
means
the historical audit may be less relevant as opposed to a preventive audit. Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah, preventive, and also it has to be continuous in nature. So
it virtually has to be real time.
Yes, the real time or a near real time is very essential.
As opposed to an annual financial audit.
Yes.
In future.
Yes, it cannot wait. So in fact, we have also told the T+1 reconciliation, and many are doing on early reconciliation, because the transactions have grown into billions. That means I can't wait for a day even to look into that billion transaction or a lack of transaction that occurred to see whether I'm able to reconcile it. I need to be more vigilant and then, of course, on a near real-time basis.
I just wanted this. So, can you, on the touch screen. So, before I go on to the audience questions, there are quite some. Okay. One very quick question to you, Akhilesh. You can answer very crisply. Use of technology. Do you believe the auditing profession is using it much more, or the medical profession is using it much more? You know, not being a CA, it may be easier for you to answer.
This is a googly question. Which profession is using more? The short answer I would say is medical profession is using more technology today than the auditing profession, but it also depends on the maturity of medical institution, and the auditing institution is what I would say.
Thank you. There are questions. We can move on to the audience questions here. There's a first question from Sushrut Chitale. The question is, CA firms have developed on the model of law firms, where a partner specializes in a domain and works with her team. He's moved already into the diversity area by using the word her team. Should the structure be changed to help CA firms scale up? Girish, would you like to take this?
So let me see if I've understood the question right. So should we have partners who specialize in specific industry sectors to do better audit work? Is that a way to kind of articulate that?
You see, what his question is, you have a partner at the very apex who's a specialist, but you have a team of generalists with different, maybe a technology, a tax specialists, etc. Is that the right model, or do you need him or her to also be literate in all the other areas?
I mean, it'll be great if one person, if he's really or she is really a superhuman, can be expert in all areas, technology, business.
But what he did not ask is what should be the profile of the firm in the future. You see, in a medical profession, you have a hospital full of doctors with various specializations. Patients go there depending on what their illness is. They seek a service, right? Hospitals are not necessarily owned by doctors. They are owned by, could be investors. Do you think the profession should move to that model where you have technology specialists, tax specialists, accounting specialists, etc., but the firm can be owned by anybody, and there is investment into the firm, and that's where you get financial muscle? Are you seeing firms already moving in that direction?
I think the reason chartered accountant firms and are still partnerships is they want to remove this whole idea of agency, that there is investor who's got certain goals and investor has her or his managers who actually run the business. They want to have kind of unity of ownership and work, so that there is authenticity in terms of what is done and there is no difference in goals as well as actions. And that model has worked quite well, except that in very large firm there is a little bit of a gap between who actually manages versus who does. I think if you use technology well, actually the size of firms may come down because you'll need fewer people, but you will need smarter people. So you could stay with the partnership model with a very different structure underneath. At least that's my...
I'll come back to that a little later. There's a question from Mr. Giridharan. Yeah. When we are discussing audits...
Are you not the best place to answer that question?
I'll come back to that. That's why I said I'll come back to that. Okay, let me answer that. Fundamentally, in any profession, there should not be a mismatch between the profile of the profession and the constituency the profession serves. The other day I was at a Western India regional conference listening to the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. He lamented in a way the fact that there are 90,000 or plus sole proprietors practicing. Now, if you're talking of future of audit, and you're looking at the business environment, and 90,000 comprises maybe 2/3 of the members in practice, perhaps. So if that is 90,000 single individuals, are they equipped to do audits then? Is the profile consistent? And that is therefore, I believe that every profession should evolve and change its profile to match the constituency which it serves. It's almost like saying, if I were to use a cricket term, I will have a team full of fast bowlers when the wicket is a spinning wicket. Aren't you going to use horses for courses? That is what we need to do. So a leading question to the regulator here is, when we are discussing the future of the audit profession, why is RBI reducing the percentage of branches under audit on a year, especially affecting the young CAs? I'll supplement this by saying, would branches be relevant at all?
Okay, maybe I'm not the right person to comment on it because I'm getting into more of a technology, IS audit and cybersecurity audits. This is more for the audit regulatory group of our Department of Supervision to comment on it. But let me just comment on one aspect what currently we are contemplating about. I said about the urban cooperative banks, and there are more than 1,000 urban cooperative banks which are in the level 1 and I discussed about the 4 levels. Maybe they have a branch or two with a core banking system and not offering any digital channels, but still they are very, very vulnerable to the various types of cyber attacks. But the requirement for them to get audited is not, in the IT we have something called certain empaneled auditors. They are security professionals or security professionals to do complex types of vulnerability assessments and high-tech technology audits. But we don't want them or their competence to get into a 1 or 2 branch audit where the requirement is not that much. It is the basic controls that are to be checked. And there is no currently a body like ICAI to sort of regulate such types of auditors, the IS auditors, so-called IS auditors. So we need a segment who understand the business, but also the technology, not a complex one, but then fair amount. So we are taken up with ICAI. We are in the process of discussing with them to say, can you set up some, say, Section 8 company and to see, can we have someone who can get into the IS audit part, similar to what ICA is doing for the like chartered accountants. Here they can be CAs or non-CAs, but then they are also getting into the types of audits. Could be a branch level, akin to what I said about UCB is more than 1,000 in numbers, and several other regulated entities are there who require not a high-tech audit, but then definitely certain base level audits, IS audit or information system audits to see, they are equally having a good cyber posture to their level of exposure that they have.
So Akhilesh, thank you. Akhilesh, one quick last question. There are a number of questions. I'm sorry we don't have time for all the questions. This question, it says, in spite of using best technology, some frauds remain undetected. In those cases also, auditors are penalized. What can be the solution to this?
So first of all, I'm not qualified to answer the second part of the question. I'll answer the first part of the question, saying why, despite using technology, many frauds remain undetected. As I had kind of alluded to earlier, is that there is no technology which will completely detect frauds which are done with the management intent, because the data can be presented in different ways and all that. Because one thing is I'd like to tell you that as much technology we all, so just make a 30-second back. You actually have said that, is technology good or bad? It's a question. I always say that no technology is good or bad as it is built. It is good or bad as it is applied. Is gun good or bad? It is bad if it is being used to kill an innocent. It is good if it is being used to protect the country. So every technology can be used for good purposes and bad purposes. And as much as all of us good people are talking about use of good technology for good purposes, there are enough fraudsters, criminals, they are using the same technology for bad purposes. So as much as you can detect patterns using technology and data analysis as auditors, I can tell you the fraudster can create the same amount of data and patterns, knowing what patterns to feed into the system so that it doesn't go detected. There is no shortcut for us to use only technology. And I think that is why the need for skepticism understanding the business, getting the context, that is far more important than just technology, because people who are using technology for bad purposes will actually be able to bypass that for sure. Now, do auditors get penalized? I'm not suited to answer that question, but I'll tell you, actually I feel a little bit bad for many of you who are professional, because there are two reasons I feel bad. One is that all the CAs, in my view, are like rockets. Not because you're aiming high, but we generally don't move till our ass is on fire. So there's a rocket principle which applies. That's one bad thing. The second bad thing, which I will tell you, it's just do a thought experiment. Imagine you are an auditor for all the aviation industry in the US, and you're sitting on January of 2011, 2001. Now it's like many years ago. And imagine you went as an auditor and said that one of the big risks which you have in the aviation industry is that somebody can actually get into the cockpit and fly the plane into Twin Tower. And can you guys build control to make sure that it never happens? And here I'm suggesting that you build all cockpit doors bulletproof. And imagine in the thought experiment, the civil aviation officer or the Senate actually approves saying, hey, take this $2 billion and make all cockpit doors of all aircrafts bulletproof. Trust me, if that happens, there will be no 9/11. But when you're sitting there, would you be clapped for saying that, hey, as an auditor, I actually averted such a big industry catastrophe because I did it. In fact, you might be asked questions saying, was this control worth it? Was $2 billion worth it? Because we can only talk about as the fault of auditor many times when a black swan or bad event actually occurs. All the hundreds, thousands, millions of black swan events, all of the industry actually protects. Sometimes it doesn't get protected. So therefore, as I said, I'm not the person who's qualified to do this answer, but it's a very difficult dilemma one has to go through. And having said that, we can't shy away from it. We have to be, we are the auditors, we are the eyes and ears of the investors, regulators and all that, and we have to do it. Technology will help us. We can continue to move up the agenda, but take it in this stride saying, we are all those frontline fighters. We do this job, sometimes we'll take the bullet, but we protect the country.
I think very good. I think the simple answer to the question is what the Ministry of Corporate Affairs once said. He said, I don't expect you as auditors to look for needles in haystacks. I surely expect you not to miss the elephant in the room. And that perhaps summarizes regulators' expectation or even society's expectations of auditors. There will be stray cases of auditors being unjustly penalized, or stray cases of auditors not being penalized where justly they should be penalized. Both sort of situations can happen. So thank you very much. We've had a good panel discussion. Some quick messages from this panel. One very good message, that the audit profession has a future. So we don't have to worry about that. So I think you can go back and have a good lunch with that. The second, what we heard from the regulator, is more preventive as opposed to coming in later detective, because the volume at which transactions are happening, naturally the concern is something real time. Just as much as what you expect if somebody is cleaning up your bank account, you would want alerts, you want something to be notified, rather than fight with the bank much later. So from that you can extrapolate and determine what is the type of audits which are required. And from what Girish said, I think, which is a very important thing, in terms of what should be the professional of the future be, and what should be the professional firm of the future. Clearly, it cannot be an accountant with pure accounting specialization. Whether it's in one individual or it's in a set of individuals, it needs a widespread specialization, and definitely you can't ignore the fact of technology if you want to take advantage of the developments in technology and convert the threats into opportunities. So thank you once again for a very, very useful discussion, and thank you, audience, for listening.